The day I turned 18, my parents said, "You're an adult now. Handle it yourself," and threw me out with one bag. Years later, they appeared claiming my house should go to my brother because family comes first. They didn't expect what I said next. Can you imagine the gut-wrenching sting of celebrating your 18th birthday, the supposed threshold of adulthood, only to be met with a cold, brutal ultimatum? My own father looked me in the eye that day and declared, "You're an adult now. Figure it out." It was a line delivered with such chilling indifference. It felt like a cruel joke. I stood there, a cheap duffel bag by the door, no cake, no card, just his arms crossed, a brick wall of a man. My mom was a ghost behind him, eyes glued to the floor. My voice cracked, asking if this was some twisted prank, but he didn't blink. He just pointed to the packed bag and gave me 10 minutes before he changed the locks. That's how I left home. Not with a party, but with $60 and no idea where I'd sleep. My name's Alex, and that was 3 days after high school graduation. I wasn't some wild kid. I had a 3.7 GPA, a part-time job at the gas station, and dreams of community college. But none of that mattered. The truth? I was always the spare. My younger brother, Nathan, he was the golden child. I used to joke he had a halo tucked away somewhere. When he got straight A's, it was brilliant. When I did, it was just expected. He'd crash my bike and get a new one. I'd break a shoelace and get blamed. Nathan was 2 years younger, but they treated him like the heir to a throne I didn't even know existed. Braces, tennis lessons for him. Used sneakers and silence for me. Whenever I dared to ask why things were so different, my dad would just shut me down. "Don't be dramatic, Alex. Life's not fair." End of conversation. I learned not to push. I kept my head down, worked, studied, and told myself I'd leave on my own terms at 18. Turns out, they just beat me to it. That first week out of the house. Brutal. I bounced between friends' couches until their parents got uncomfortable. One rainy night, I slept in the break room at work. Eventually, I found a dingy room in a shared house. One roommate sold weed, another blasted music at 3 a.m., and the third, Chun, barely spoke English but always offered me instant noodles and a warm smile. That man, Chun, was more family than my parents had ever been. It took me 4 years to get on my feet. I worked every odd job imaginable: cashier, delivery driver, janitor at a mall that always smelled like stale popcorn. I studied during breaks, took online classes, and clawed my way to an IT degree. No help, no trust fund, just me, a busted laptop, and pure, unadulterated stubbornness. By 26, I had a clean one-bedroom, a car that ran, a good job, and for the first time, peace. Not happiness yet, but peace. I didn't think about them much. No visits, no calls. I wasn't bitter, not consciously anyway. I figured if I wasn't good enough then, I certainly wasn't going to beg now. Then, one Sunday morning, everything shifted again. 3 sharp knocks on my door. Too firm to be friendly. I peeked through the peephole and froze. My mom stood there, and behind her, slightly out of view, my dad. Same posture, arms crossed, like the day they threw me out. My first thought wasn't, "Why are they here?" It was, "How the hell do they even know where I live?" I opened the door, but didn't step aside. "Alex," my mom started, all breathy and wide-eyed like it was some long-lost reunion. "You look grown." "I am grown," I replied flatly. "What do you want?" My dad cut in, "No small talk. We need to talk. Can we come in?" I just stared for a long second, then stepped aside. They sat on my couch like they owned it. My mom surveyed the place for dust. My dad remained standing, hands on his hips. The silence was thick. "We've had a rough few years," my mom finally said. "And your brother?" "Well, he's in a bit of a bind." That familiar cold twist formed in my stomach. Of course, this was about Nathan. "What kind of bind?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "He got laid off," she said softly, like I was supposed to feel sorry. "And his fiancée left him, took the car. He's struggling." I waited. "We thought," my dad stepped in, "that since you're doing well now, and since you have this place, maybe it's time to come together as a family." I raised an eyebrow. "Come together how?" My mom glanced at my dad. "We think it would make sense for Nathan to move in here, just temporarily until he gets back on his feet." A moment of stunned silence. I almost laughed. "Almost. You're joking," I said. "No," my dad replied firmly. "You've got space. It's the least you can do. Family comes first." Those 3 words. Something in me snapped. Family comes first. The same family that tossed me out like garbage? The same family that let me go hungry while they remodeled Nathan's room into a study after I left? Let me get this straight, I said slowly, my voice low. You threw me out on my 18th birthday with no warning, no support, and now you're asking me to house Nathan because family comes first. My mom looked uncomfortable. We made mistakes. Mistakes? I interrupted. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. Alex, my dad said, stepping forward, trying to exert control. He's your brother. He needs you. You don't turn your back on family. I stood up. You did. The room went quiet again. Look, my mom tried to soften her tone. He's been through a lot. He's not like you. He doesn't handle hardship well. He's always been sensitive. And I wasn't. I said, incredulous. I just didn't have the luxury of falling apart. It was clear they weren't getting it. Or didn't want to. My dad kept pressing, guilt-tripping, comparing. He even had the audacity to say I'd built my life off the back of their tough love. I almost choked. That wasn't tough love. That was abandonment. Plain and simple. They left that day without an answer, but I knew it wasn't over. I felt it in my gut. They wouldn't let this go, not with Nathan in the picture. I had no idea how far they'd push. But I was no longer the scared 18-year-old they left behind. This time, I had something to lose, something to protect. The storm, I realized, was just beginning. They didn't call for a few days. I actually thought, maybe, just maybe, they'd taken the hint. I almost convinced myself their ridiculous request was a one-time shot at manipulation. But by the next weekend, I knew I'd underestimated them. It started with a voicemail from Nathan. I hadn't heard his voice in years. It was tired, scratchy, oddly rehearsed, like he was trying to sound pitiful on purpose. Hey, Alex. Mom and Dad told me they came to see you. I know it's a lot to ask, man, but I'm kind of out of options right now. I lost my job and my place, and I've been crashing at a friend's, but it's not working out. I could use your help. Just until I get back on my feet. Please call me. I didn't call him back. That wasn't me being cold-hearted. That was self-preservation. I knew this play. Nathan had always coasted on his charm, that disarming way of acting helpless, like a lost puppy. Everyone, especially our parents, would rush to save him. But not me. Not this time. I had scars they never even noticed, and I wasn't going to pretend they didn't exist just because Nathan was finally facing consequences. Still, that voicemail gnawed at me. Not guilt, more like dread. If Nathan was reaching out, it meant my parents had activated the next phase of their plan. And I wasn't wrong. 3 days later, I came home from work to find my dad's car parked outside my building. My stomach sank. He was standing by my door, arms crossed. Same posture, same scowl. As I approached, he just said, "We need to talk." I didn't bother inviting him in. "We've been patient," he said, like I was a rebellious child refusing vegetables. "But you're being selfish." I laughed. I actually laughed. Selfish? You think I'm selfish? You've got a stable life now. Nathan doesn't. You don't think your brother deserves a chance to? What he deserves, I said, has nothing to do with me. He stepped closer. You're part of this family whether you like it or not. No, I replied, staring him down. You made sure I wasn't. He didn't like that. His jaw tightened, and I saw a flash of anger, but something worse, too. Entitlement. Like he genuinely believed everything I had was somehow his to bargain with. He didn't yell. He just said, "You'll regret this," and walked off. 2 days after that, the text started. From extended family, cousins I hadn't heard from in years, even a random Facebook message from a family friend. All the same message. It's not right to turn your back on family. Nathan's struggling. He needs support. You're doing well. Can't you help just a little? One cousin even said, "Wow, didn't realize success made you so heartless." It was coordinated. My parents had spun a narrative, I'm sure, where I was living like royalty while poor Nathan was in the gutters. The irony? My apartment was modest at best. But it didn't matter. The narrative was set, and I was the villain. I could have fought back, told everyone the truth about my 18th birthday, but a part of me refused to play their game. I'd spent too many years letting their narrative define me. I wasn't going to beg people to believe me. That was the beginning of the slow unraveling. Nathan started showing up in person. First in the parking lot, then the lobby, then once he was waiting outside my door. Always with that hangdog expression, like he was too beaten down to even speak above a whisper. "I'm not here to fight," he said one evening. I just need help. I'm not the one you should be asking, I replied, trying not to slam the door. But you're the only one who can. That line stuck with me, not because it was true, but because he truly believed it. My parents had conditioned him to see me not as a brother, but as a safety net. And now that they'd run out of rope, they were throwing him onto me like dead weight. Then came the real breaking point. I was at work, knee-deep in a network issue, when I got a call from my landlord. Never happened. I picked up, worried. "Hi, Alex," he said, unusually cheerful. "Just wanted to confirm you're moving out by the 1st, right?" I blinked. "Wait, what?" "Well, your brother stopped by this morning. Said you were moving out and transferring the lease. He had paperwork and everything." My heart dropped. "No," I said slowly. "I never said that. I'm not moving out." There was a pause. "Oh," he said. "He said you asked him to handle it while you were at work." I couldn't speak. My fingers were shaking. "Don't worry," the landlord added quickly. "Nothing's changed yet. I figured I'd call to confirm just in case." I hung up and rushed home. Sure enough, Nathan was waiting outside my door again, but this time with a backpack and a smug look. "What the hell did you do?" I snapped. He had the nerve to look confused. "What do you mean? You told my landlord I'm moving out? Are you insane?" He shrugged. "I figured you'd come around eventually. I was just speeding things up." "By lying? By forging my name?" "It's not forgery if we're family," he said, like that made any sense. "I was just trying to help." I stared at him, stunned. "Help who? You? Me? Everyone. This back and forth is tearing the family apart. Once I'm settled in, we can fix all this." That's when it hit me. Nathan didn't see what he was doing as wrong. He honestly believed he was the victim, entitled to my apartment, my life, my stability. The scariest part? He didn't even see me as a person. I was just the next stepping stone. That night, I locked every window and door. I texted my landlord, explaining that no one but me was authorized to make changes to my lease. I changed my locks the next morning. I even bought a small camera for my entryway. I didn't care if it was paranoid. I needed proof. And it did happen again. The next week, I came home to find my lock scratched, tampered with. I checked the footage. It was my father. He had tried to break in. That was it. That was the moment I stopped waiting for them to be decent. The moment I accepted they weren't just entitled, they were dangerous. I wasn't going to defend myself anymore. I was going to prepare. If they thought I'd sit quietly while they dismantled my life piece by piece, they had no idea who they were dealing with. This time, I wasn't alone. And I wasn't playing defense. Now, I was planning something they would never see coming. When I watched that footage, my own father, trying to pick my lock like some second-rate criminal, I didn't feel fear at first. I felt cold, numb. There was a strange, delayed silence in my brain, like my mind was buffering what I'd just seen. He didn't even wear gloves. No mask, just a baseball cap and a jacket I recognized from my childhood. Like he'd just come from the grocery store and decided to casually commit a felony on his way home. The only reason he didn't get in was because I'd changed the lock that morning. And in that moment, something shifted. I realized what I'd been denying since I was 18. They didn't love me. Not really. Maybe they loved the idea of me. The version that quietly disappeared, didn't cause trouble, didn't get in Nathan's way. But the real me, the one who survived without them, who dared to say no, that person was a threat, an obstacle, and obstacles got moved. I sent the footage to my landlord immediately, told him I was considering a police report. He was sympathetic, stunned, but also nervous. Said if I felt unsafe, maybe I should think about moving. I knew he meant well, but I couldn't help feeling like I was being punished for my father's actions. Again, the next few weeks were a blur. I didn't sleep well. Every time I passed a window, I checked for shadows. I stopped wearing headphones on my way home. I even started carrying pepper spray. And I hated that. Hated what it meant, that I wasn't safe. Not from strangers, but from my own family. That's what truly broke me. It wasn't the messages from relatives. It wasn't Nathan's fake lease paperwork. It wasn't even my father trying to break in. It was the realization that if something had happened, if I hadn't changed that lock, if I had come home 10 minutes earlier, there would be no justice, no support. No one in my family would have believed me. They probably would have blamed me for overreacting again. That's when I hit bottom. I called in sick for the first time in years. Didn't leave the apartment for 3 straight days. Didn't answer texts. I canceled every plan, let the dishes pile up, turned off my phone just to feel silence again. I sat on the couch, replaying that video until the battery drained. My own father, hands shaking, eyes darting like a stranger. I remember crying once, just once, not loud or messy, just sitting on the bathroom floor, holding a towel, feeling every ounce of strength leak out of me like air from a popped balloon. I wasn't sobbing. I wasn't even angry. I was just tired. Tired of fighting for space that should have been mine. Tired of pretending I was fine. Tired of building and rebuilding when no one ever even saw the foundation. But somewhere in that quiet, something shifted. I don't know what triggered it. Maybe it was seeing how far they were willing to go. Or maybe it was finally admitting how badly I'd been hurt. But for the first time in years, I stopped reacting. And I started planning. First, I pulled all my security footage from the last month. I archived everything, created backups, uploaded files to cloud storage with strong passwords. I documented every interaction, the voicemail, the text messages, even screenshots of Facebook comments from distant relatives parroting their guilt trip language. I turned my apartment into a case file. Then, I locked down my life. Every password changed, two-factor authentication on every account. I called my credit card companies, placed fraud alerts, and pulled my credit report. Nothing suspicious yet, but I wasn't waiting. Next, I told my boss everything. Not the whole saga, but enough. I told him I was dealing with a family situation, that people might try to contact me or show up. To my surprise, he was incredibly supportive. Gave me a few days off, even offered to forward unknown callers straight to voicemail. Funny how strangers often show more grace than family. I used those days to meet with a lawyer. Found her through a friend, a quiet, serious woman named Jordan who listened without flinching. I laid it all out. The eviction at 18, their sudden reappearance, the manipulation, the attempted lease fraud, the break-in, the surveillance footage, the paper trail. She didn't interrupt. She didn't act shocked. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "You have grounds for a restraining order, and maybe more, depending on how far this goes." For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. That conversation sparked something in me I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. Control. Not revenge, not yet, but power. And that was enough to start healing. In the following months, I shifted my focus inward. I enrolled in a certification course I'd put off for years, cloud infrastructure and data security. Boring to most, but to me, it was a ladder. Every night, I came home, made dinner, and studied. No distractions, no drama, just progress. I started seeing a therapist, too. Elena, she didn't coddle me. She called out my avoidance, gently pointed out my patterns. She helped me realize I wasn't broken. I'd just been surviving on autopilot for so long. I didn't know how to feel safe, even when I was safe. One session, I told her I didn't think I'd ever fully trust anyone again. She said, "Maybe you don't have to. Maybe it's not about trusting everyone. Just learning how to trust yourself not to let them get too close." That stuck with me. Over time, I made new friends, real ones, people who didn't want anything from me. I joined a running group, which if you knew me would sound hilarious, and somehow sweating alongside strangers made me feel human again. I even started dating casually. Nothing serious, but I smiled more, laughed even. Sometimes, I caught myself walking around my apartment just content. I hadn't felt that in a decade. But that peace came with clarity. Even though I was rebuilding piece by piece, breath by breath, I hadn't forgotten. They were still out there, still lying, still twisting my story. And while I didn't want to live in the past, I wasn't about to let it rewrite itself without a fight, especially because of what came next. It started with a letter. Not a text, not a knock. A formal letter mailed to my apartment. Handwritten return address. No stamp. Just slipped into my mailbox. It was from my mother. I stared at the envelope for 10 minutes before opening it. The letter was 3 pages long, neat handwriting, the same loopy cursive she used on birthday cards back when she still remembered to buy them. It started with the usual, "We miss you. We never meant to hurt you. Things were hard back then." Then it shifted. She wrote that Nathan was going through a deep depression and was making serious plans to fix his life. She said they wanted to transfer the family home to him to give him a fresh start, but some paperwork still listed my name as an heir from years ago, when my grandfather left a small inheritance to me and Nathan jointly. She asked me to sign a few things, said it was just a formality, just paperwork. I folded the letter, set it on the table, and sat there for a long time. It wasn't just about the apartment anymore. They were after something bigger now. Something tied to family property, inheritance, land, things I didn't even know I had a legal tie to. But they knew. They always knew. And they'd kept quiet until they needed something. Until he needed something. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't feel broken. I felt focused. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about setting the record straight, legally, financially, and emotionally. And for the first time in my life, I was going to write my own ending. But first, I had to gather every piece of the puzzle they thought I'd forgotten. And once it was all in place, they'd finally understand what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. By the time I finished reading my mother's letter for the third time, I wasn't just suspicious. I was certain they were trying to erase me. Not metaphorically, legally, quietly, permanently. The wording wasn't angry or threatening, and that's what made it worse. It was sanitized, coated in that fake kindness they used to use when I was a kid, asking why Nathan got dessert and I didn't. It's not about fairness, sweetie. It's about what's best for everyone. Only this time, it wasn't about dessert. It was about the family home, a house I hadn't thought about in years. I don't know if you've ever had to dig through the legal graveyard of your own childhood, but it's a strange experience. I started by emailing Jordan, my lawyer, and sent her the letter. Her reply came within the hour. If they're asking you to sign anything related to your grandfather's will, don't. Not yet. Let's pull the documents first and see what they're trying to override. That was the spark. She filed a request for the original estate documentation the next morning. While we waited, I started doing what I do best, documenting. I created a digital folder titled Operation Cleanup because humor helped keep the fury from boiling over. I went through every piece of communication, texts, voicemails, letters, and created a timeline. I also started writing a personal statement, just to keep my thoughts in order. That process, it was unexpectedly cathartic. Writing everything down, I started noticing things I'd missed in the moment, like how each reaching out moment from my family had a purpose. Not connection, not reconciliation, just extraction. They only ever contacted me when they needed something. The groceries when I was 14 and Dad forgot his wallet. That turned into a "you owe us for raising you" argument by dinner. The time I gave Nathan my laptop when his broke in high school. That turned into him telling everyone I was so generous, while our parents acted like it was a birthday gift they gave him. Even now, after a decade of silence, they hadn't come back to apologize. They came back with a plan. Well, now I had one too. 2 days later, Jordan called. "I've got something," she said, her voice low even though I was on speaker in my own apartment. "The inheritance." "Yep. Your grandfather left a joint trust split 50-50 between you and Nathan. But here's the thing. The house your parents live in, it was never theirs to keep. It was bought under that trust. And your grandfather's instructions were explicit." "What kind of instructions?" I asked, heart hammering. "If the property is sold, proceeds must be split evenly. If it's kept, both heirs must consent to any transfer of title. They can't sign it over to Nathan without your permission." I sat in stunned silence. They'd been living there for over a decade. They must have known, or at least suspected, which meant this whole time they were hoping I'd either never find out or be naive enough to sign it away without asking questions. Jordan continued. "If you want, we can put a formal block on any attempts to transfer ownership, but it might alert them that you know." "No," I said slowly. "Let them think I'm still considering it. I want them to get comfortable." She was quiet for a second. "Alex, are you planning something?" "I'm planning to make sure they never try this again." The setup took weeks. Step 1 was information. I requested property tax records, deed history, every document tied to the trust. Jordan handled most of the legal side, but I wanted to understand it. The more I read, the angrier I got. They'd manipulated loopholes, skirted co-ownership clauses, basically lived off my inheritance while pretending it was their God-given right. Even their renovation permits listed Nathan's name as a future beneficiary. Step 2 was silence. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't call. I didn't push back. And that drove them nuts. A week later, I got a follow-up note from my mom. Shorter, more emotional, filled with underlined words like family and unity and legacy. There was even a little line at the end that made me laugh out loud. "We hope you're not letting old wounds cloud your judgment." Cloud my judgment? They made me homeless on my birthday, but I stayed quiet. I let them believe I was still the hesitant, soft-spoken kid they booted at 18. Meanwhile, step 3 was already in motion. Allies. I started by calling my cousin Rachel. We weren't close growing up. She lived across the state. But we'd always gotten along. She'd messaged me months ago during the family guilt campaign, but she wasn't aggressive like the others, just confused, curious. She picked up on the second ring. Alex. Hey, Ratch. Got a second? That one conversation opened a floodgate. Turns out, Rachel had her own issues with my parents and Nathan. Especially Nathan. At a family reunion a few years back, he'd cornered her husband about investment opportunities, trying to sell him on some shady crypto project. She'd never trusted him since. Once I told her what was really going on, the property, the trust, the manipulation, she was furious. I knew something was off when Aunt Linda acted like they owned that house outright. I remember Grandpa always saying it was for the boys, not just for Nathan. We talked for an hour. Before hanging up, she said, "Whatever you're planning, I'm in." After that, I reached out to 3 more cousins, 2 of whom had also been iced out of the family for minor offenses, like dating someone unsuitable or moving out of state without permission. Same story, different details. Within a week, I had a mini network of black sheep, all willing to back me up publicly if things went sideways. Some even had old photos, letters, even voicemails that hinted at the trust situation, evidence that would further establish my parents knew the terms and just chose to ignore them. But the final setup came when I got a call from Nathan himself. I let it go to voicemail. His tone had shifted again. No longer pitiful, now confident, a little smug. "Hey, Alex. Look, I know you're taking your time with the paperwork, but just a heads up. Mom and Dad are getting everything finalized with the lawyer. We're hoping to wrap things up this month. It'd be easier if you just signed and sent it over, but I get it. Sometimes you gotta feel like you're in control. Just don't take too long. Family's watching." That message was the last piece I needed. They were moving forward illegally, and they'd left a breadcrumb trail of intent in writing. Perfect. The next morning, I met Jordan at her office and outlined my final plan. We drafted a cease and desist letter to their lawyer, citing the exact clauses of the trust they were violating. But instead of sending it immediately, we waited. I wanted to time it perfectly. I knew Nathan's birthday was coming up. They always made a big deal about it. Family dinner, gifts, emotional speeches about his potential. If they were going to make a formal announcement about the house, that would be the night. Jordan agreed to be on standby with the letter and injunction paperwork, just in case. But I had one more card to play. A week before the birthday dinner, I made a quiet call to a local investigative journalist, someone who'd covered shady real estate deals before. I sent over the public trust documents, my mother's letter, and a redacted version of Nathan's voicemail, just enough to get them interested. And they were. Turns out, inheritance fraud tied to elderly estates was a hot topic, especially when one sibling had been kicked out at 18 and the other was trying to force them out of their share years later. I didn't tell them everything, just enough for now, because the revenge wasn't complete yet. But the trap? It was set, and I was done playing nice. The night of Nathan's birthday dinner, I didn't sleep. Not from nerves, not from fear, but from focus. Everything was ready. The documentation had been reviewed. The legal response drafted. My phone was charged at 100%. I even set a reminder titled, "Drop the Hammer," for exactly 7:30 p.m., just in time for the big family speech I knew my father would give. Jordan was standing by with the court injunction. The journalist had already emailed me twice, asking if I had a comment to include in their final draft, which was set to go live that weekend. This wasn't revenge out of anger. That would have been easy. This was revenge born from survival, from 10 years of silence, of being erased. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about reminding them that I exist. I dressed in a plain black button-up, not to show up in person, but because I wanted to look put together when I FaceTimed Rachel. She was already at the birthday dinner, seated at the far end of the table like an outsider. She'd agreed to go on one condition, that she record everything. At 7:24, she texted, "He's starting." Then at 7:28, "They're bringing out a giant cake." Dad just stood up with a glass. I opened my laptop, clicked into the shared drive folder I titled Inheritance Audit, and made sure everything was visible and timestamped. Emails, voicemails, texts, copies of the trust, the letter from Mom, Nathan's smug voicemail, all of it. And then I waited. Rachel called me at 7:33. I answered immediately and saw her holding the camera low under the table. The video was shaky, but I could see the room, a backyard lit by string lights. Nathan at the head of a long outdoor table, wearing a polo shirt and a fake grin. My parents standing on either side of him, beaming like politicians. My dad raised a glass. To Nathan, he said, loud enough for the recording to catch everything. Who's always been the rock of this family, and who's finally ready to take on the responsibility of being homeowner of the family house. There were polite claps. My mother wiped a fake tear. Rachel slowly tilted the camera up. I saw Nathan smile and lift his own glass. I'm honored, he said. It's been a long journey, and I just want to thank Mom and Dad for trusting me with this legacy. We've already started the paperwork, so it's official. I smiled and nodded to myself. It was time. I texted Jordan one word. Now. Within 30 seconds, the cease and desist letter hit their lawyer's inbox with a high importance flag. A copy also went to my parents' shared email. Another to the county recorder's office to block any title transfers under the trust. But the final nail came from the journalist. I opened the article draft one last time. The headline read, Invisible Heir, Family Trust Dispute Reveals Ugly Battle Over Inheritance, Alleged Deception and Legal Trickery. I clicked send on my statement. They erased me the day I turned 18. Now, they'll never forget who I am. The article went live 5 minutes later. I knew they saw it within the hour because by 8:45, my phone exploded. It started with Rachel's text. Your mom just screamed. Your dad's on the phone yelling at someone. Nathan's face is white. Then Jordan emailed. Just got word from the county. Title is frozen. Pending review. You're secure. Then silence for 2 full days. No calls, no knocks, no guilt trip letters, just silence. Until the fallout began. Monday morning, I got a call from Jordan. They're pushing back, she said calmly. Nathan's lawyer responded. But it's sloppy. They're claiming implied transfer rights, but the trust is airtight. This is exactly what we expected. What's our next step? We counter with evidence. Full documentation of your occupancy termination at 18. The inheritance clause, their attempts to coerce and misrepresent your position. It's not just civil court territory anymore. We may be talking criminal fraud. That word, fraud, felt like justice. It wasn't just that they'd try to take the house. It was the fact that they'd planned it so carefully, assuming I wouldn't fight back, that I was still the weak one, the invisible one. But the truth was, they never bothered to check who I'd become. Over the next 2 weeks, the article picked up traction. Not viral, but enough to stir some attention in our small town. A few neighbors reached out, asking if I was okay. One even said, your dad always talked about how proud he was of his 2 sons. Didn't know they only meant one. I didn't reply. Let the truth do the talking. Legally, the house was locked in a holding pattern. Any sale or title transfer was impossible without my signature. Their lawyers started backing off fast, especially when Jordan filed a formal report with the State Bar Association, citing ethical violations in the attempted deed transfer without full heir consent. That got their attention. But the real fallout? It happened within the family. Word started to spread. Rachel told me Aunt June confronted my parents at church, asking if the article was true, that she'd always wondered why I never came around anymore, that maybe they owed me more than a phone call. Then my cousin Will posted the article on Facebook with the caption, funny how some people forget who helped build the foundation when they're decorating the living room. One by one, the cracks deepened. My parents tried damage control. My mom sent a long email titled, Our Side of the Story, claiming I was twisting facts, that they were just trying to do right by both sons. It was filled with passive-aggressive digs and fake apologies like, we're sorry you feel wronged, and you've always been too sensitive. I forwarded it to Jordan. She laughed and said, this is gold. Keep everything. Then Nathan finally called me. I stared at the screen for a while before answering. He didn't say hello. He just said, why are you doing this? I leaned back in my chair. You mean defending what's mine? You're tearing the family apart. No, I said. I'm just refusing to let you steal from me. It was never about stealing. You lied to my landlord. You tried to take my lease. You forged paperwork. You went behind my back with the trust. What would you call it? He didn't answer. So I kept going. You let them throw me out when I was 18. You watched me disappear and never once asked if I was okay. And now you want to pretend like this was all just a big misunderstanding. I was a kid, he snapped. So was I. Difference is, I didn't have parents fighting for me. There was a long pause. Then quietly he said, they're going to lose the house. I didn't say anything. Do you even care? I thought about that. About how many nights I spent wondering why I wasn't enough. About the times I'd rehearsed family conversations in my head just to feel sane. About the empty birthdays, the lonely holidays, the silence that swallowed my 20s whole. No, I said finally. I care that they remember why. A month later, the final paperwork came through. The house was to be sold. Per the trust, I would receive half of the proceeds, over $180,000. My parents would need to vacate within 90 days. Jordan handled the logistics. I never saw them in court, but I did get one last envelope. No return address. Inside was a photo of the house, the backyard, the table where Nathan had made his little speech. And scribbled in black ink across the top were the words, "Hope you're happy." I pinned it to my fridge. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that silence doesn't mean weakness. That distance doesn't mean defeat. And that sometimes, the best way to get the last word is to build a life where they don't get a say at all. And that's exactly what I did.